Okay, so we've just gone ahead and checked this rig, and one thing we might have noticed is we've got a problem on these eyes, these antennas, and it's a problem that when we move these out, we can see it doesn't look like it should. You want a smooth curve going along here, and we can look at it, sort of looks like it's stepped. So if we look at the arms and we'll see if the same thing's happening, we can see nope, on the arms it seems to be working. So this is what we'd like to see, basically, is this nice smooth curve. But for some reason that's not happening the same on these antennas. So what we can do is, I'm just going to select one of these antenna joints, select one of the arm joints, open up the character node in the outliner. I'm just going to press F to expand that, and then just collapse these just so I can see which groups they're inside. Select those two groups, well, select the first one, right click, select hierarchy. I'm going to just display the local rotative axes on the arm, do the same, and we can see here the reason this is happening. So if we look at the Y, we can see they're all facing up. As we move this up, you can see how it's smooth, it's easing in and easing out, you know, and they're all facing outwards, how do you expect. But with the antenna, we can actually see as we move these back, they're always pointing up, and that's the reason for this stepped along here, because these joints, they should be rotated like this. So if we just manually rotate them, you can see that that's fixing the problem. So we want to find out why these aren't rotating properly, and also I'm going to show how we can add joints without affecting the skinning, so we can sort of edit. So I'm just going to select these two groups again, select hierarchy, take the local rotative axes off, and what I'm actually going to do is, down here we've got, well, on the antenna we've got about 9 joints, on the arms we've got 21, and that's working really well for like these sine waves. We're getting these really nice, you know, really nice curviness in these arms. So what we actually want to do is increase the amount of joints in the antenna. So it'd be good if we had 21 like the arms, because we've added those edge loops in there on the model, so we might as well have them in there, because these antennas in some of the animations planned for this are going to become quite large. So you can see how there's a massive gap between each one of these joints now. So if we did that sine wave, we're not going to get any detail in between these joints. So, but I don't want to redo the skinning that we've already done. I mean, we've only just started, we did the interactive smooth skin, so it won't be too bad if we just, you know, restarted and did the skinning again. But I just want to show you guys how, if you have done some skinning already, you can still go back and change parts of the rig without affecting the skinning you've already done. So to do that, we can select these joints and we can go to skin, edit smooth skin, and remove influence. But before I do that, what that's going to do is, if I remove all these antenna joints, suddenly all these CVs, or well, these vertexes that were influenced, so basically this section of the antenna that was influenced by these joints, has to be reassigned to other joints. And Maya's going to do an automatic job of that. It's going to pick some of these down here. It might pick ones in the arm. It'll pick this eye joint at the top. And I don't really want it to do that, because then afterwards, when we do reapply these joints, I'd have to clean it up. I have to select these joints down here, remove the influence up here. So what I'm actually going to do before we do that, I'm going to select the mesh, go to skin, edit smooth skin, and I'm going to go to the paint skin weights tool, go to the option box, and with the, so I'm going to go to the eye joint, and what I'm going to do is go to replace, set a value of opacity 1, a value of 1, and flood, and this is going to assign, so you can see the white means that eye joint is now affecting every single vertex on this mesh, which we don't want. You know, that's not an ideal, that's not going to work, but this now means that if I remove these joints, because these vertexes influenced by this eye, it's not going to reassign the weights to random other joints. It's just going to keep them set on this eye joint. So that means when I re-add the new ribbon, you know, I don't have to clean up all these joints. I don't have to re-edit the weights. All I have to do is re-add the joints and then clean this one eye joint. So I could re-flood it with a value of 0 and then just paint the weights just for the top of the eye. So that's going to save us a lot of time. Okay, so one thing we could do is try fix this so the Y does rotate. So the Z does rotate, so the Y axis points along the surface. But as I've said, I actually want to just recreate this, so we've got more joints in there. So what we can do is I'm going to bring up the outliner, and we will show the blend shapes and bring these extra to hide joints back in. Extra to hide groups, sorry. So we can just display what we're going to be working with. So start off with, I'll delete these two sine curves because I'm going to recreate both sides, and then I'm going to frame up these joints. So I'm going to select all these joints actually. Just select the mesh, go to skin, edit smooth skin, remove influence. So you can see moving these arms and everything below, it's not going to have an effect on the antenna. The antenna is going to follow this eye. So you can see here, moving this eye control, which is moving that top eye joint, we've got a value of 1 set on there. So that means it's just following the eye. That way it hasn't reassigned the weights. We're going to see some funky stuff going on because, again, remember, this entire mesh now is influenced by the eye. So you're getting all the movement from all the joints, but you're also, the whole mesh is following the eye. So that's why you're going to get these weird results. But that'll be fixed when we remove the influence from the eye, once we've added the new antennas. Okay, I'll do the same on this side. Take this ribbon group, select the mesh, got skin, edit smooth skin, remove influences. That's going to do the same. Okay, so now what we can do is going to take these two groups. Because we've removed the influence, they're no longer affecting the mesh, so it's okay to just hit delete and delete those two groups. The next thing we're going to do is if we just hide the mesh, so hide polygons, we've got these follicle groups, so I'm going to go extra to hide. So I'm just going to press F to frame that up, and I'll copy the name and paste it into a notepad so we remember the names, what we use, so we can just reuse the same names. So this is group left antenna, the right antenna and the left, and just hit delete on them. We can see that's removed the follicles. Now I'll just show you here the reason why we had that dodgy antenna, why the Y wasn't rotating to aim down. And if we go to surfaces and let's go to display NURBS, and I'll just tear off this NURBS display. If with both these selected, I'm going to go to surface origin, so display surface origins, and we can see that on the arm, see we have the V, which is the green line, is going up. We have the U, the red line, going along this surface. But for the antenna, we have it the opposite way around. We have the V, we have the U at the bottom with the V going all the way up. And this is the reason that we had that rotation not working. So we could have flipped the surfaces, then, tried to work with this, but we're going to replace these anyway. So I'm going to select these two surfaces and just hit delete. So there we're done. We've removed the two antenna ribbons from the scene cleanly, so it hasn't affected the mesh, and we haven't affected the skinning of the rest of the rig. So now all we need to do is recreate those. So I'm going to go to surfaces, creating a plane. I'm going to vert snap to the mid joint, and in the NURBS plane, actually I'm going to rotate it first. Rotate 90 degrees, and I'm actually just going to duplicate this and vert snap to the opposite side, and just scale them up slightly. So with these two selected, instead of degrees, I'm going to set this from cubic to linear, and we're going to do the same that we did with the arm. Set it to linear, I'm going to set the V patches, and we can see here the V's going up. So what we actually want to do is I'll select these two, display, NURBS, tear that off again, surface origins, and just check we've got the same going on. So we've got the red line along the bottom, the U, and we've got the V going up, and this actually isn't what we want. So if you think, if we rotated this 90 degrees to match the antenna going up, the length of the antenna, we actually want the U, so this red line going up the antenna. And also we want to make sure, I'm going to switch normals, going to make sure that's so they're facing forward. And we can see here this has got more normals than this surface, which means I'm just going to delete that actually, because it wasn't set to cubic. So I'm just going to snap that over there. Okay, so to flip these around, what we're going to do is go to Edit NURBS and Reverse Surface Direction. Just go to the options, and I'm going to go to Swap. So with these selected, you can see that it's swapping the U and V directions over. So now we've got the U aiming down that twist of the length of the antenna, which is what we want. One thing you want to make sure is it's flipped. So I'm going to display the normals on this. It's flipped the normals over. So I'm going to reset the settings and just hit apply. So resetting the settings is just set to surface direction U, and we're just doing the same as we did the default, just flipping the normals over, but we've preserved the U and the V. So the red, the U is still aiming up, and the V is still down the width of this. Okay, so I'm going to leave these displays on for the moment, just so we can see them as we're working, so we can make sure that nothing changes. Okay, with this I'm going to right click, insert isopalm. Right, so with these two selected, go to Edit NURBS, Rebuild Surface, reset the settings, and I just want to rebuild in the U. So I'm going to click the U direction, and I'm going to number of spans and keep it linear. Put the number of spans at 2. Okay, so setting it to the U direction, which is the length of the antenna, setting the number of spans to 2, so we're going to these two faces, sort of, these two patches, and keeping it to linear for the moment. So this means that what I can do now is we've got the 3 sets of CVs, and I'm just going to snap the top one to the top, bottom one to this bottom joint, and the middle one should be already in the middle, but I'll just vert snap it anyway. So now we're doing the same as we did with the arm, because manually adding isopalms is good for like the spine, so we can choose where we want more joints to be placed. So it can be uneven distribution of these hair follicles, but for the antennas and the arms I want them to be precise. So this span is going to be exactly halfway through. Okay, so we've got those two surfaces now, and all I'm going to do is reset the settings, and we are going to rebuild in the U. So I'm going to switch to U again. I'm going to set it to 21 because I want 21 follicles on it, and we want it to be cubic, so remember, switch it to cubic now and hit apply, and we can close that. So now we're getting those, so you can see it's cubic, and you can almost see with the normals here actually the way that they're splaying out and sort of evenly distributing between, so we're going to get the same with the hair follicles. So I'm actually going to delete the history on these guys, freeze transformations, and I can just hide these normals and surface patches. I'm actually going to leave the surface origins on these. So anytime I want to check these out, I can just, this should be on by default, that's okay. So with these now, I'm just going to go to Dynamics, in Hair, Create Hair. Remember it was the U direction, so we want 21 in the U, 1 in the V, and I'll just hit Apply. Do the same on the other side, hit Apply. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here and just do the same that we've done in the same process as the tutorials before. I'm going to select the output curves, select the hair system, the nucleus, delete it. I'm going to unparent all these follicles. I'm going to put them back in their follicle group and create 21 joints. You know, get vert snap it to the same position, or parent constraint with the maintain offset on, and then put those groups in their put those joints in their bound groups. So if you want to refresh your memory, just go back to the tutorials where we set up the end spines. We're just going to be repeating the same process. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and remade those joints, redone the parent constraints, and put them in their separate groups and rename them to the same names that was used before. So what we can do is take these joints, put them in the ribbon joints group again, take these two ribbon follicle groups, put them back in the extra to hide, and the same with these two NURBS surfaces, put them into the extra to hide. And I'm going to just hit Ctrl D with these NURBS surfaces to duplicate them, move them aside again for that sine wave. So I've got my either side. Now I'm not going to apply the sine wave now, I'm just going to put these into the blend shapes. I'll just hide the blend shapes for the moment. So if you want to reapply that sine, I'm going to do it after that tutorial. It's just going to be the same as in the previous tutorial, so just follow along with that. But what we can do now is reskin these driver joints that were made. So select these large joints, the driver joints, shift select the NURBS surface, skin, bind skin, smooth bind, selected joints, probably a max influence of 3 because there's only 3, so it doesn't really matter, but just make sure it's selected joints. Do the same on the other side, select these 3 joints, select the surface, apply, just double check that's working. Yep, so that's looking good. And again, it's looking a lot better because we've got a lot more spans and a lot more joints in there. And just to confirm that it's worked properly, we're going to go to the 2 ribbon groups that we created for these joints. I'm going to go to select hierarchy, and I'm going to display the local rotative axes of both of these, and I'll just move these controls about, and we can see, yep, that's looking good. So the Y is now twisting, or rather the X, because the X is the one that's pointing down the surface now. So that's working as we would like, and moving these out we can see the Z axis that's looking quite nice. Again, with more joints it's going to work a lot better. Okay, so we just disconnected that ribbon spine, deleted it, and then recreated another ribbon spine, and we've done this cleanly that it hasn't affected the rest of the rig, and we can reattach it to the rig. So now it's fully reattached. So I'm just going to hide that extra to hide group. Okay, so now what I need to do is re-add it to this skin cluster, this polygon, the mesh of the character, because it's not doing anything at the moment. So what I'm going to do is expand both these groups and just select all the joints, shift select the skin and go to skin, edit smooth skin, add influence, and go to the option box, and I'm going to uncheck use geometry because we're using joints, so that doesn't really matter. That's if you're using things like polygons or NURBS. And I'm just going to set the drop off to, so I'm just checking the grid as a reference to how big this character is. And the drop off 4 is probably a bit too much because these joints are so close together, so I'm going to put the drop off about 2 and hit apply. Let's go to close. I can see now that's been added in there, it's working quite well. We can see we're not getting that weird stepped look before, like we've got before. I'm going to select, so I'll just hide these groups and hold shift and click the character node to collapse all groups, so it's just clean in there. And selecting the skin, going to skin, edit smooth skin, paint skin weights tool. If I can find it, paint skin weights tool, go to the option box, and I'm just going to check the eye and look at this eye. We've now re-added those joints, and you can see here the sort of area that it's added in. So we'll have to clean this up a little bit, add a bit more to the spine. But you can see it's taken the weights up here, so taking the eye weights, because the eye, if you remember, we flooded it with a value of 1, which added the whole antenna onto it. But now, because we've added influence back to those new ribbons, it's no longer white along here. So what I'm actually going to do is down here you can still see we've got the eye controlling the rest of the body, which isn't going to look good. We're getting this not very nice skinning. So what I'm just going to do is flood it with a value of 0 on the eye. And if we got any verts flying off on the eye because they didn't have any influence, what we could do is select the ribbon, the top ribbon joint, and just paint it white at the top of here, then pass it back onto the eye. But it looks like it's done a good job. So, and one thing we can do is right click on this eye over here, or the approximate area of this joint, and right click and go to select influence to select it in the skinning tool set. And we can see it's assigned too much over here, so I just want to replace a value of 1 on these eyes again. And again, when skinning, it's best to come out of smooth mesh preview, so don't press 3, press 1 to bring the mesh back to its default resolution, because it's a lot easier to skin with, because you can actually see where the vertexes are, whereas when you're smoothing it, sometimes it can be lying to you basically. What I mean by that is if a vertex sort of snaps out over here, if you're using the smooth mesh preview, by holding 3, it'll average that vertex down, so it'll smooth it, so it might actually move this back close to the mesh, and it doesn't look like too much of a problem if there's a slight bump. But then if you go back to 1, which is the actual resolution, you'll see that vert's actually quite far out, so it can trick you. So another thing is, if you want to change the radius, so I'm going to pause the video here and we'll just end in the next tutorial. Now we've added these ribbons back in, I'm just going to go through and start refining the skin weights.